Hey everyone! This week we'll be doing something a tad different. See, every week we tell Hector to go Smurf and win in a specific way, be it late game macro, lane dominance, recall timings, etc. This is to teach you guys those specific concepts so you can obviously improve. But this week, we'll just let him Smurf. Instead of forcing him to play a specific way so that we can teach a single concept, we'll just let him stomp the game how he normally would. Therefore, we don't really have any specific missions this week, just a general one, which is to really think about your actions. See, League is honestly just a cause and effect game. Before making a decision in the game, you should always think about what the effects of that decision will be. Once you become good at knowing what will happen, you can easily control the outcomes of your games. You'll notice as we break down all of Hector's decisions, how almost everything plays out exactly as he wants it to. And with that in mind, let's get into the game. For this replay, he'll be playing Lucian against players who were gold to platinum elo last season. Hector's first decision of the game is to immediately mute his Hecarim. We're sure you know this, but you can usually tell when someone won't say anything relevant the whole game. For the early laning phase, he's just going to be punishing Vayne and Thresh whenever they don't stand parallel to one another. Looking for isolated trades is a very powerful tool to destroy low elo laners. Soraka moves forward as the second waves crash and forces a trade. This is technically okay by the Soraka player. Her play was fine, but her thinking Hector should move up instead of securing these last two hits and level 2, then being really annoyed about it, is why she's immediately muted. Hecarim is then coming in for a pretty early gank, so as they hit level 2, Hector doesn't hesitate to blow both his summoners to easily score a double kill. We do want to point out this should not have gone as well as it did though. Vayne didn't heal. What Hector actually wanted was to trade his life here for Vayne, then he'd die to Thresh. That's a kill on Lucian versus just an assist on Vayne. Not only that, but she'd miss this entire wave crashing into her tower, so it would definitely be worth it. On top of that, since crashed waves slowly push back into the other side, Hector would come back to lane with an item advantage and easily freeze versus Vayne to obtain a huge lead. But low elo players have terrible reaction times, so he's rewarded with an unintended double kill. Afterwards, he does make a small macro mistake. He didn't want to shove his wave instantly, since his goal was to buy Vampiric Scepter and just freeze versus Vayne. But that's not the best buy that he can get at the moment. By shoving this wave, he gets 1100 gold to buy tier 2 boots. These are a great early purchase to snowball lanes. The speed lets you initiate trades more easily and allows you to evade ganks, especially when your summoner spells are down. Now, believe it or not, ADCs are actually allowed to roam. You just have to do it right. Hector notices that Echo is very low in mid lane, and a huge wave is crashing into his tower. Echo will be stuck there for a while longer, and with his tier 2 boots purchase, Hector can potentially get there in time to punish him. This is primarily possible because he cleanly crashed that earlier wave into Vayne's tower before basing. Vayne and Thresh won't be able to crash the wave into his tower fast enough with their slow wave clear, so he won't miss many minions by making this roam. He does get pretty unlucky here with Echo dodging his Q and leveling up, barely denying him the kill. Okay, situations like this is where people forego using their noggin and go on autopilot. So many players would randomly auto attack this wave for no reason. But Hector just won lane for LeBlanc. He's handing her a freeze and a blown Echo's flash. If you know anything about mid lane, it's that setting up a LeBlanc with a freeze against a player with no flash leads into the easiest ganks ever. Of course, many low elo LeBlancs won't appropriately make use of this huge advantage. That doesn't matter, and don't ever let that influence your decision making. Knowing what should happen is more important than what actually happens. As he paths back bottom after the gank, we see Vayne trying to cut him off in the river. This is a huge mistake by the Vayne. As Hector glances at the wave, notice the obvious difference. Hector could roam because the wave is shoving back into him and he's not missing many creeps. Vayne, on the other hand, is missing a ton of farm for no reason. While Hector does misclick the blast plant, causing him to take way more damage than he should have, it still doesn't matter. Who cares if you're at 200 HP when your opponent can't punish you for it anyways? Once he gets back to lane, Hector sets up the freeze we discussed earlier. Unfortunately, in his efforts to zone Vayne, he damages the wave a bit too much. Maintaining freezes this close to your tower can be tricky, and even good players screw this up sometimes. This prompts Vayne to just walk away and fake recall, which is actually pretty smart by her. Let's watch how Hector reacts, then break it down. So this may not seem fancy, but he just completely denied Vayne's fake recall option. Let's first address what the point of a fake recall even is. You go out of Fog of War from your opponent and begin channeling your recall. If your opponent continues slow pushing, you can base, buy items, and come catch the wave before it hits the tower. With full HP, it makes getting dove much less likely and allows you to farm safely. Your opponent obviously doesn't want that. The fake recall just means that you cancel it once your opponent begins fast shoving the wave. The wave is now pushing into your side faster and not being slow pushed. This means that you miss less overall CS and are in a safer lane state. This is why the second Vayne left vision, Hector began immediately shoving the wave, but once he saw her back in lane, he completely stops auto-attacking and continues the slow push. Now she no longer has that option because the wave is shoving slightly too quickly into her tower, and pretending to recall wouldn't accomplish anything. Basically, despite Hector messing up his own freeze, he's forced Vayne to stay in lane at low HP and opened her up to being easily dove. Once the wave crashes, we do see Vi in mid lane ganking LeBlanc. This is great information since we now know that this dive won't be countered. Hector and his team could dive on this wave, but generally you try to avoid dives while there's enemy minions present if possible. They can creep block people in tower range during the dive, block skill shots, do extra damage, etc. This is why Hector waits until he clears the next wave to ping his Hecarim to come in, and as you can see, the dive is clean and effortless. After the dive, Hecarim wants to share gold instead of doing something productive. You should know by now how we feel about sharing gold as an ADC. As the second tower plate falls, ask yourself this question: do you really want to sit here with 3 people and spend 12 to 15 seconds to share 40 gold? Of course not, that's not remotely efficient. Hence, Hector dips immediately and does Hecarim's job for him. His Echo is constantly overstaying in lane at the verge of death. This time, the roam does result in an easy kill. Unlike last time, the wave situation is a bit different. It's shoving back into Echo instead of LeBlanc. Thus, Hector actually shoves it out this time and fixes it for her. Tragically, he does waste his E and Vi happens to be there to punish him. Whatever, mistakes happen, and at this point, his team is so far ahead that it won't matter. By the way, we released some crazy guides over at SkillCapped which are exclusive only to our subscribers. We have over 700 guides covering everything you need to know to rapidly improve. We also send our challengers into Elo Hell every week to see how they climb out of the most extreme scenarios with the worst teammates imaginable, all wrapped up into courses that you can watch right away. Oh, and if you don't significantly improve while using SkillCapped, you get a full refund. So, what are you waiting for? Sign up today and escape Elo Hell. He respawns and makes his way bottom. Unfortunately, his Soraka is ganking mid for some reason as Soraka, so he has to lane 1v2. He looks for the 1v2 opportunity once Thresh wastes his hook. Then, after waiting out his cooldowns, he flashes forward, knowing that all of their CC has already been expended for an easy kill. Then he just kites towards his Soraka to make sure that he lives. Knowing that Vi is mid, Hector and Soraka just keep pushing to eventually take down the tower because there's no way that she'd make it down here in time before it fell. Take note of how Hector immediately unmutes Hecarim and Soraka once he's stomping the game. His fragile ego is only held up by the praise of the gold Elo players that he carries every week. But yeah, the game is really over at this point. Hector stomped mid and bot so hard that it doesn't matter that the enemy Garen was fed. Poor guy forgot his role is irrelevant. The advantages Hector secured this game were never off of his mechanics. It was always his understanding of the effects from the decisions that he was making that allowed him to always be in control of the game. This allowed him to have such great map impact even as an ADC. That's going to be it for this week. Thanks for watching.